Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight. I'm Alexis, and I'm joined by David Francisco here for another installment of our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reaction commentary series for the longtime S.H.I.E.L.D. fan who wants to come back on here and talk endlessly about one of our favorite shows of all time. We have been at this for just about a year now. We have concluded Season 2. And with the release of this episode, we're going to finish talking about Season 2. Last week, we attempted to do our full Season 2 review, and then we realized it was too much for one episode, and certainly it was too much for us to do in one sitting. So we just kind of decided, you know what, we're going to split it up into two parts, and I feel it ended up working out just fine because we still have to reveal to you guys what our top 5 favorite episodes were. We have to also go about, watching the bloopers and deleted scenes and cast interviews. So there's a lot of stuff left to go over. So this is going to be the last part here of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2, continuing off on where we were last time. In the time that we have been off, did we get any other comments or questions in from anywhere, by the way? And while David checks that information, I do want to go ahead and make something of a announcement. This is going to be the last episode of our S.H.I.E.L.D. reaction commentary series. Hold your breath. Not for a long time. You're fine. We're going to be gone for a month. We're hoping 4 weeks. We are planning to come back on May 26th, which will be Friday, May 26th. We are making a decision to, I think ending the season is a good time to just break for a little bit. But then it also just happened to be that there are some other things that we want to do. And they're kind of hard hitting and they're kind of coming fast for us. So we're not necessarily going to have the time to do everything all at once. We're hoping to do some Andor reactions, and that's coming back very rapidly here. How we're going to do that, I don't know yet, but we're going to try doing it because it's going to be 3 episodes in one sitting, which that will be interesting. And then we're also going to try and do some movie commentary reactions as well to come out next month. So as you can imagine, and that's not even to say if there may even be some podcast episodes of the normal Red Spotlight podcast, so you never know when that's going to happen. So there's a lot happening this next month, so we figured now is the best time to do so. But please don't feel the need to just go away. We want you to stay, of course. Please leave all your comments down here, and we will be back. I'm going to say it again, March, Jesus, no, May 26th. But I think the day that this is going to be dropped, it'll be April 23rd? Yeah, I think so. No. Sorry, no. It'll be April 18th. Sorry. I had the wrong week there. So, yeah, but we do hope if we can stay tuned for what we're planning this next month. Those Andor reactions are going to be interesting. So, we hope you stay tuned for that. Although, of course, that gets into the realm of Star Wars, and that may also lead into some interesting territory as well, because people have very, very complicated and emotional feelings about Star Wars as well. David, did we have anything?
Yeah, just one from Silva. Okay. Silva says, AOS Season 2 is special because the MCU was still all connected. Quotation marks. We had the MCU films, AOS, Agent Carter, and Daredevil. One could argue it was the peak of the continuity as everything begins to separate after the Season 2 finale. It was a special time in the fandom indeed. Yeah, for sure the peak for Daredevil. Daredevil didn't have much. It was just those, remember, news headlines, the Battle of New York and all that. I think I could be confusing with Luke Cage, but I know they mentioned a character was mentioning there were, the god was fighting in the sky and all that, blah, blah, blah. I think that might have been Luke Cage. I could be confusing it. But either way, though, I think for sure the peak was with the Netflix shows when you were like, oh man, they're putting out so many good things and all that.
Yeah. Well, they started out good anyway.
Yeah.
and then things kind of took a nasty turn. Marvel Entertainment deserves a lot of credit for getting so many projects off the ground and making so many of them really good. I mean, for a minute there, we had like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage.
And
That was good. And then
Iron Fist.
and then literally Iron Fist happened and the whole thing just collapsed. I mean, you can't make this shit up because it was going so well. Iron Fist came out bad. Then Defenders happened, right? And it was mixed to not the best. And then later that year, we had Inhumans.
Okay, I was about to ask that. Like, wait, when did Humans come out? Did it come out?
It was all the same year. It was all the same year. And we were documenting this in real time on our podcast all those years ago. We had both, of course. What was funny is that Iron Fist and Inhumans, we could tell very clearly what?
Yeah, what's going on here?
Particularly because they both have the same showrunner, Scott Buck. And I think ultimately it was they were probably doing too many shows at the same time because it got to a point where they all got renewed. There were multiple seasons of all of those shows that I had mentioned, and they weren't given much to work with. It looks like they really kind of got cheaper as they went along. And I think Jeff Loeb, who was the president of Marvel Entertainment, was like, yeah, I had to look for ways to cut costs because Kevin Feige, of course, had nothing to do with any of this. Loeb did not report to Kevin Feige. He reported to Ike Perlmutter. And remember, it was Ike Perlmutter's insistence that his division of Marvel do Inhumans, despite Kevin Feige's wishes. Kevin Feige never wanted to do Inhumans. So when he announced that movie, that was not because he wanted to do it. Because at that point, Bob Iger wasn't his boss. It was Ike Perlmutter. That's part of the politics at play here. And poor little S.H.I.E.L.D. got caught in that in a really big way. But I will say, unlike the rest of those shows, even though, Marvel Entertainment, again, beginning with S.H.I.E.L.D., and then it also ended with S.H.I.E.L.D. Hilariously enough, it's like, all these shows got off the ground in a big way, and then one by one, the dominoes fell in a real, in a very unceremonious way, with each one less unceremonious than the one before, amazingly enough. And then, of course, we all came back with S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was like the last thing ever that they did. And then Disney Plus happened, and then, of course, Disney made the stupid-ass decision to go to the Marvel Studios team, divide up all of their resources into not just making movies, and then also TV shows, but were really, in quotation marks, there were long movies masquerading as TV shows, which was part of the flawed concept to begin with. But they did so without actually having any of the people who worked on TV. Yeah, a bunch of incompetent people making even more incompetent decisions along the way. But I think in some small way it is a bit of a poetic justice, right? The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. team were among the most underappreciated people working in this space, still to this very day. And it was the complete, what's the word here? Arrogance of all of the people around them. Because instead of listening to their own eyes and their own tastes, a lot of these corporate executive goons are listening to the loudest voices on the internet. They're listening to the fans as the ultimate judge for what works. I think we've seen time and time again where it gets you when you listen to the fans blindly. and it gets you nowhere good. And you wonder why storytelling and movies and shows that come out from the biggest studios like Disney are suffering. Because they're not able to even discern what talent is anymore. But they also have no interest in hiring talented people. So there we are. But it was an interesting era, and I believe Emma's video will get to that also in the tail end of the video. If that is it, I wanted to read an official season 2 review by one of our frequent critics here, Eric Goldman, who has reviewed the show at this point every single episode for IGN when he was at IGN. And this is what he says. For many, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has become a forgotten and or overlooked series. By the way, this was written May 21st, 2015, basically 10 years ago. At this point, it was already feeling like the narrative had set in, and people were just not talking about it as early as season 2, which is insane to me. Which is too bad. And yet understandable. This was Marvel's first TV series, coming off of an amazing run of movies. Oh God, we really, really had rose-tinted glasses, didn't we? They were good movies, especially Marvel Phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
And some of Marvel Phase 2, there were some good movies. Some of them really good. Amazing? I think Iron Man 1's amazing.
Mm.
I think The Avengers is amazing.
Yeah.
I think the Winter Soldier and the first Avenger and Guardians of the Galaxy, I think they're amazing. And I really feel like that's, at this point, universally accepted. Some may feel differently about, First Avenger, whatever. At the time, though, it's funny because I feel like half of the MCU movies then, as they do now, but then, had harsh critics. People had very mixed to negative reactions. First Avenger at the time was not beloved, I should say. So that was one. Incredible Hulk. Yeah. Already at that point, not very well received. People had their issues with the first Thor, and even more with the second Thor. People had their issues with Iron Man 2, and for some, because of a decision made with the Mandarin, even more issues with Iron Man 3. And then, of course, while you and I really enjoy, and in its own way kind of love Age of Ultron, people were poo-pooing it at the time, So it's like, Amazing Run is an interesting way. I think it more so captures the feeling, right? Like, I think all of these movies, they kind of worked as movies for them. I mean, they sure as hell worked as movies in comparison to what we have right now. Right now, we've just like cratered into the deep end. Like the last Marvel movie, I gotta tell you, I keep forgetting I even watched it. Every time we have a discussion about what movies we've seen this year, that one I keep forgetting.
And we keep forgetting the next one that's gonna come
Thunderbolts.
out. Yeah.
I keep forgetting it even exists. So that's a big problem, right? But all of those other movies that we just mentioned, I can remember all of them vividly, for better or for worse. And I think what was amazing is that for the most part, they were all coherent and they kind of worked. And at least half of the movies were actually pretty good. So, and there was also the promise of the future. So I feel like, and then of course, that's not even mentioning the TV stuff, which was really beginning to hit off with Daredevil, especially. People were like, ooh, this is interesting. By the way, it was interesting because Kevin Feige was not involved in it, as he was not involved in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I guarantee you, I'm sorry to say, I think most of, if not all of the things that were the best at that time were not necessarily under his domain. So there's that. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, coming off an amazing run of movies. And then he says, and Shield just didn't deliver when it debuted. Well, that's fair in terms of like what people were expecting, but I think it's unfair realistically what it was that people were expecting, which is what we were saying for a long time. Eric says, the initial episodes felt unfocused and badly paced, and were asking us to buy into a would-be family dynamic involving a bunch of poorly defined new characters. Many people dropped out of the series early on, and they haven't come back. And some never will. That's me adding on to that. Even as the end of Season 1 found S.H.I.E.L.D. notably improving in the wake of Captain America the Winter Soldier. Perhaps Season 2 will get some additional views when it hits Netflix next month, thanks to the more positive buzz on the series. Those who do will find a show that picked up things considerably from where it began. The pacing was hugely improved, with storylines no longer taking forever to bubble up again, and secrets no longer being kept both from the audience and the characters that no one on screen seemed in a hurry to deal with. Instead, there was payoff to big plot threads happening consistently, as both lingering questions from Season 1 and newly introduced plot lines were deftly dealt with and tied up, while paving the way for new mysteries. On the villain front, there was some nicely done twisting and turning regarding the big bad would be in Season 2. Or who it would be, I should say. We began with a focus on a Hydra leader, Whitehall, and while Reed Diamond had fun in the role, Whitehall rarely had moments that made him feel like a truly credible threat. Okay, Eric, fine. I think some of us would not agree with that, but okay. When he was killed in the mid-season finale, it seemed Kyle MacLachlan's Cal would take center stage as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s main foe. But there was yet another swerve in store. The fact that Sky's mother, Jiaying, played by Deechan Lockman, was alive at all was a surprise, and we soon saw that she was the leader of the Inhumans and could be pretty strict and cold when it came to doing what she felt was right to protect her people. But that was all hiding just what a zealot she had become, convinced war with humanity was inevitable and willing to begin it herself via a staged attack to get all her people on her side. The fact that Jiaying was the true main villain of the season was a subtle, slow reveal and much appreciated for how it was pulled off. We understood the tragic events that changed her, even as we came to see she and not Kel was the most dangerous. Oh, and did I say Inhumans? This was also a huge part of the season, which was especially notable because it indicated that behind the scenes, Marvel had decided that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. could lead the way in a much more notable way than before, rather than being simply reactive to the events of the films. We know an Inhumans film is coming in a few years, lol, but now this series has already introduced the concept to the MCU. Presumably, the film will focus on the royal family and a very different group of Inhumans than the ones we met her. But this show I'm so sorry, guys. But this show was still allowed to be the first part of the MCU to give us the Terrigen Mist, the Kree origins, and all the major background elements of the Inhumans. In general, S.H.I.E.L.D. felt less restrained this season. The first couple of episodes utilized the notable Marvel villain Absorbing Man, while the reveals that Cal and Skye were respectively Mr. Hyde and Daisy Johnson Quake rooted the show much more into the Marvel Comics roots. While it began in the latter half of Season 1, S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 also benefited from much stronger characterization. While there were so many characters that they all didn't get as much time as might have been ideal, they still all felt much more distinct and specific than the show's early days, and the fact that several members came and went and shifted allegiances kept things interesting. Ming-Na Wen was always a great presence on the show, but Melinda May was given a lot more depth with Andrew, her ex-husband. The rift between Fitz and Simmons added a lot more textures to both of them, and was beautifully played by Ian and Elizabeth, while Coulson, now the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., had to reevaluate his approach, making much harsher decisions that pained him, but felt more involving and believable than the overly sappy, often naive approach that he began with the series with. That's a take. As for Sky, the writers and producers certainly still were determined to make her the most important and revered character on the show, but this season it actually felt like they were earning her that position. Sure, we had to accept that she'd apparently gotten one hell of a crash course in being a badass fighter from May between seasons, but it felt good to see her actually be such a formidable presence in the action scenes. I will take a break from Eric's review to say here is that's true, but we shouldn't pretend like it was that big of a reach, because it's not as if the show came back and she automatically, like, Sky had all of this like action prowess ability to her and she was like kicking ass, and it took a while to get to some of those scenes where you really, I would even say this, by the time we got to the Dirty Half Dozen, which was in the back half of the season, we just reacted to it about a month ago. We were like, whoa, that was the first like real moment, a real action moment for her. So I feel like it never to me became unbelievable that she like could do it, because they took their time with it, you know, which is different than how things are today, where there is no time to do any of this. Okay, let me just cut to the chase. Speaking of McLaughlin, what a job he did. While Deechan Lockman brought the perfect pained righteousness to Jiaying, who truly believed that she was doing was right, what she was doing was right, McLaughlin had the freedom to go absolutely crazy, and the absolutely crazy Cal, and wow, was he fun. He expertly conveyed his character's wish to be a happy, doting husband and father intermixed with his violent rage, and gave the season some of its best moments. The new additions to the S.H.I.E.L.D. crew were also appreciated, with Hunter, Mac, and Bobby all fitting in very well. With such a big group of agents, someone was bound to be overlooked, and unfortunately, that was Trip, who never really got a storyline of his own, except to be the big mid-season death, which wasn't as impactful as it could have been because he felt like a character with potential that was never fully utilized in any capacity. The other S.H.I.E.L.D. storyline was an interesting inclusion, with Edward James almost bringing exactly the gravity you'd expect him to as Gonzalez. I like the idea of he and Coulson being so opposed and yet very respectful of one another in their own ways. I just wish we'd gotten a bigger payoff to that, as Gonzalez was killed by Jiaying before he and Coulson really came to any sort of conclusion in their own conflict, except on the very begrudging, wary allies level. He says that there was some awkwardness with how they included the Age of Ultron tie-in. He said he was concerned early on about they would try to redeem Ward, but they didn't, and that the show deserves a lot of credit for that. The verdict. S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 benefited from a show unafraid now to shake up the dynamic, perhaps having to completely change everything about the series 2/3 into the first season served as an inspiration. But from Simmons' double agent status to Gonzalez's crew taking over, the show rarely felt stagnant. The show's always been in a difficult scenario. People love the interconnectivity of the MCU, but because the movies have the big superhero heroics covered, S.H.I.E.L.D. felt hindered by not being able to deal with a lot of the bigger name heroes. In a way, the series, like The Flash, doesn't have to deal with. The decision to have Coulson and Sky begin to form a team of superpowered members seems to indicate those involved have decided it's time to bring some more ongoing Flash, excuse the term, to the series, even if it won't be the biggest name characters. Things will no doubt change in a big way as a result, but right now it's exciting to ponder what's coming next. Those are Eric's thoughts on where we are and season 2. Okay. David, are you ready to reveal what your favorite episodes were this season, I should say?
Right.
Or would you prefer, well, I don't know. Is there really any that stands out as like least favorite, because I feel like with season 1, there were some pretty clear episodes where I'm like, well, I like it, but this is not one that I'm going to watch again.
Mm-hmm.
This one's tricky because I don't know where I would begin. I think what's harder is picking 5 least favorites.
Yeah. I really can't think of like a least favorite episode. There's an ambulance going by. I don't know if you can hear it. Sorry, but
That's fine. I don't know what you were talking about. I don't hear anything else.
Okay. Yeah, I can't really think of a least favorite. At least not like of how it was with the first season where we mentioned that Asgardian one was kind of like our least favorite. It was fun, but everything else, there's always just that one moment where it's like a really standout moment. And yeah, like on rewatch, you look at it like, yeah, all this works. All of this is very important for it to lead up to the finale.
We can save this for later. If we don't have that figured out yet, but this one might be a bit challenging to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and continue where we left off.
Hint at the existence of Adelan. The point is, though, that this is an important first for the show. Like I mentioned before, it's not just introducing a few individual comic book characters, but they're able to take charge of introducing an entire group of superhumans to the MCU and, in effect, setting up an entire movie. This makes it get to be a more active part of the MCU, which is something that'll come up again when we get to this season's major tie-in. For now, though, at Afterlife, we, start to meet more Inhumans, like Lincoln, this very wonderful, sweet man, played by Luke Mitchell, who helps Skye adjust to being there and being an Inhuman. The two of them have a lot of chemistry, so obviously I shipped them immediately.
Take my hand. I know it's so awkward.
I mean, yeah.
But you strike me as someone who's generally more curious than afraid. It took a while to get control. When I first got here, I almost burnt the place down. Literally. But now, sky's the limit. No pun intended, I guess.
They're so cute. I love them. Like Gordon, he also tries to help her see the beauty in her powers, as well as showing her that, at least to an extent, he understands what she's going through. And this just kind of highlights the contrast between the ways that her fellow Inhumans treat her versus how S.H.I.E.L.D., even her friends at S.H.I.E.L.D., have treated her after her transformation. The Inhumans understand her and treat her like a person, not someone to be afraid of or kept at a distance. Skye's still a bit wary of this new home, understandably her trust issues are back in full swing at this point, but she is able to find a new family or find her way back to one. The woman in charge of Afterlife, Jia-Ying, played by Deechan Lockman, ends up mentoring Skye, something that is apparently basically unprecedented. And eventually she reveals why she wanted to.
Why do you care if I stay or go, and why are
July
you
2nd. You were born on July 2nd.
She's Skye's mom. She's not dead. And more than that, she seems to be everything that Skye hoped she would be. She's kind, she's strong, and she cares for her people so greatly that she'll basically do anything for him. Just like she would have done anything to get Skye back before she ultimately, decided that she was gone for good. It's a lot more of a beautiful and sweet reunion than the one that she had with her father. Mostly because she's actually happy to see Jia-Ying, unlike Cal. But she does still give him at least the chance for somewhat of a, whole family again, when she reluctantly agrees to a family dinner that goes a lot better than expected. However, Skye's told that she has to keep most of this a secret, because the other Inhumans, knowing that Skye is their leader's daughter, could lead to suspicions of favoritism, something that, for them, has had disastrous consequences in the past. And the story that Jiaying tells to explain this leads to a pretty big character reveal for Mei, and the answer to one of the biggest questions that we've had since season 1. What happened in Bahrain? This episode is one of the standouts of the season, and one of the few in the show that is almost completely Mei-centric. We see that before Bahrain, Mei was a lot happier, had this lightheartedness to her that we only get glimpses of now. And she was also getting ready to start a family with Andrew, which only makes it extra heartbreaking when all of that just goes away. Essentially, Mei and Coulson were on a welcome wagon operation to bring in an index candidate, a woman with super strength named Eva Belyakov. The operation, though, almost immediately went wrong, and several people, including S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and a young girl, were taken hostage. After more agents get sent in, only to get pretty quickly taken out, Mei goes in alone, while Coulson distracts the local authorities. What she finds is that Belyakov can seemingly control other people's minds, so she's forced to fight her way through fellow S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in order to get to her. When she does, one of the most brutal fights that we've seen in almost this entire show takes place, and while Mei is pretty beat up, she wins. Belyakov is dead. However, it's not over. It turns out that she wasn't in control at all. It was her daughter, the young girl, Katya. And backed into a corner and faced with little other choice, Mei is forced to kill her.
Stop. Just put your hand down and stop. Everything's gonna be all right.
Just please.
And this is the one action that changes her life forever. Jiaying explains that the Belyakovs were in fact Inhumans. Eva stole Terrigen crystals for her daughter so she could go through the mist early, circumventing the usual processes that they have in place for this kind of thing, and causing this entire crisis. I love how much depth this episode gives to Mei as a character. You know, characters like this, you know, who generally have this thing of, like, you know, showing very little emotion, can kind of risk becoming, you know, boring and one note, but she's written and played, especially in this episode, in a way that I don't think that really happens. And we also get to have a more in-depth look at, you know, part of the foundation of Coulson and Mei's strong friendship and why she is so loyal to him, you know? After and during this tragic event, he was one of the main people there helping and supporting her. And that just makes it even more understandable why she's so hurt and betrayed when she discovers how much he's actually been keeping from her. The whole story also kind of illuminates this distance that exists between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Inhumans. You know, because of events like this, the Inhumans have, you know, from their perspective, very good reason to believe that S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't handle situations involving superhumans very well. And then Skye is just caught in the middle of all of this. You know, both groups are her family, but they couldn't be further apart. And she's left wondering, who is she more loyal to? Where does she even belong? As the season goes on, the contrast between her two different families just becomes more stark until they inevitably clash. After Lincoln and Mike Peterson are taken captive by Hydra, Skye doesn't really have much other choice than to join back up with S.H.I.E.L.D. to save her new friend. This leads to a surprising reunion of the entire original team, including Ward, whose help Coulson ended up enlisting basically out of desperation when he was on his own. And while they are successful, this means that the existence of the afterlife in humans has been exposed to all of S.H.I.E.L.D. And, of course, they can't all just leave well enough alone. Wanna guess who is the worst culprit of this? Ding ding ding! It's Gonzalez!
It's okay. She's in our custody, and we got what we wanted.
What we wanted?
Enhanced people here on the base.
Gonzalez and his people are just convinced that they need to go to Afterlife and index every single one of its residents. you know, stripping them of the privacy and security that they have had for years. They seem unwilling to even consider the idea that, you know, even though these people have lived alongside humans for literal centuries with pretty much only minor incidents, you know, they might not actually be a significant threat. Clearly, these people are capable of self-governance, you know, they've kept each other in check. But, like, no, because Gonzalez is part of this formerly big scary spy organization, obviously he knows better. Like, who gave you the right? I mean, it's very American of him. Admittedly, this isn't, like, completely unprovoked. Gonzalez only, like, really pushes for this after Gordon and Reyna are spotted on board the aircraft carrier, kind of investigating its cargo. The cargo is apparently this ancient monolith that's pretty deeply tied to Inhuman history, and it's dangerous enough that Jiaying is instantly afraid of it when she hears that Reyna saw it in a vision. Oh yeah, she can see the future now. It's a whole thing that I just have not had time to get into. I'm sorry, Reyna, you have been so shortchanged by this video. I don't really have any other choice. Now, the Inhumans don't antagonize them. They just show up, locate the monolith, and leave. But Gonzalez, in his infinite wisdom, takes this as confirmation of just how dangerous they are.
What's our plan of attack?
Who said anything about an attack?
These people are a threat.
We don't know that.
We don't know anything about them.
Except for the fact that they found our base and our aircraft carrier.
They could teleport into this room right now and leave a bomb behind.
We've seen what Sky's capable of. Lincoln could short out our entire system.
I understand your concerns, but the last thing we need is to start a war. We just finished one, for God's sake.
Action needs to be taken, Phil.
You know, he does this really fun thing where he assumes the worst of people and makes tactical decisions based off of those assumptions. But yeah, great man. Great leader. All that stuff that they've been telling us. Totally see it. Unsurprisingly, when S.H.I.E.L.D. just barges onto their land, the Inhumans don't take it very well. Especially Jiaying, who, kills Gonzalez, but, makes it look like he attacked her. Rest in pieces.
Yes, very sad. Anyway.
Oh, and Gordon hijacks a Quinjet to basically make it look like S.H.I.E.L.D. has just staged a full attack. So, yeah, everyone sucks. And it turns out that Jiaying is really willing to do anything to protect her people. Even start a war. Sky is forced to make a choice between her two lives, her two families, and she chooses the Inhumans. She solidifies her choice by fighting May, her former mentor, and she wins, knocking May out. S.H.I.E.L.D. retreats, taking Cal back with him, who Jiaying handed over as, like, kind of a peace offering, but not really. We'll find that out in a sec. And Jiaying recovers disturbingly quickly, because it turns out the way that she heals and stays young is by literally sucking the life out of people. Yeah. Both of Sky's parents are very normal. I love that for her. Her perception of her mother is finally shattered, though, when she walks in on Jiaying killing Reyna for standing up to her and basically telling her that Sky is the one who ended up leading them, not Jiaying. While I haven't had much of a chance to talk about her, Reyna definitely is a very interesting character this season. She has this whole redemption arc after her transformation. She eventually accepts that she, didn't get the beautiful gift that she was waiting for her entire life, and then discovers that she actually did get a very beautiful and important gift in her ability to, see the future. And with that, she finally finds where she fits, what she's meant to do. While Sky doesn't trust her, Reyna does still try to help her, and eventually she does, even though she has to die in the process. But her death allows Sky to actually see the truth about her mother. So Jiaying does the loving mother thing and has her taken prisoner aboard the aircraft carrier that the Inhumans have hijacked so they can both, secure the monolith and essentially defeat S.H.I.E.L.D., their main obstacle in taking over the world for the Inhumans. Once again, the family that Skye thought she had was a lie. Like Ward, Jiaying is the kind of S.H.I.E.L.D. villain who is interesting partly because you can understand why she's doing what she's doing, even if she takes things to an extreme. To her, S.H.I.E.L.D. is the very real threat, and she has sworn to protect her people from any threats, no matter the cost. And like Cal, she has lost so much, but the way that she's responded to that is by essentially putting everything into leading and protecting her people. You could say that she is somewhat pushed to this point, although that by no means justifies her actions. Like, honestly, she might even be in the right if she just responded by attacking and driving S.H.I.E.L.D. out of Afterlife. But instead, she dials up the aggression to 1,000 and goes for some kind of Inhuman supremacy goal instead. This just kind of shows how extreme her mindset has become at this point after everything she's been through. It's kind of like Gonzalez, but in reverse. She assumes that all humans are a threat because some of them have caused them harm in the past. That's why the story of Skye's parents is so compelling to me. It's complicated, it's messy. You feel for these people who have been through so much, but at the same time, see them do these terrible things out of their hurt. And poor Skye is caught in the middle of all of it, seemingly unable to find a family that isn't just utterly broken in some way. But it turns out the parent that actually cares for her is the one who is willing to sacrifice his own wants for her. So Coulson, Mac, and Fitz managed to stop Gordon from using the Terrigen crystals to affect the entire aircraft carrier. But Jiaying still has a whole stockpile that she's planning on leaving with and spreading to the rest of the world, or that's the basic idea. Skye, after being freed by Mac and finding her way through the aircraft carrier, confronts her mother, trying to convince her that this isn't the way to protect their people. But Jiaying is relentless. Now that Skye stands in her way, even she has become the enemy, and she won't let anyone, not even her own daughter, stop her. Skye uses her powers to push the Quinjet holding the crystals off of the aircraft carrier, stopping Jiaying's plan, but the two of them end up in this mutual death embrace. Jiaying is literally sucking the life out of Skye, and Skye is quaking her to death. Both are slowly dying until Cal steps in. While at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, he initially tried to attack S.H.I.E.L.D., still driven by a desire to protect his family. Coulson appealed to him as a father and convinced him to help them instead, convincing him that Jiaying's fanaticism will only hurt Skye. And when that ends up becoming a reality, Cal takes on the ultimate burden for his daughter. So she doesn't have to kill Jiaying, he does.
You don't have to live with that pain. I will.
What are you doing?
Keeping my promise.
He finally lets go of his idea of a perfect family so he can have at least one moment of being an actually good father, and it's something that's just incredibly tragic but also powerful. He has spent years just wanting to put his family back together, only to have to kill the very woman that he stitched back together all those years ago, because he truly loves their daughter, not as a means to an end, but as a full, strong, and wonderful person. And in the end, he keeps his original promise to Jiaying, to protect Skye. And he gets to have a second chance after this, which is bittersweet, but ultimately I think a really good ending for his character. Him and Skye have a heartfelt goodbye, and the technology from the Tahiti program finally gets an at least somewhat good use. They, give him new memories and a new life, so he can live a life apart from the memory of the horrible things that he's done in his past. But Skye, for her part, has gone from having no parents to having both her parents to now having no parents again. But she seems to have accepted that. She found her answers. She can have peace now, knowing that she is so loved.
I know I'm going away for good. But I was hoping you might come visit. Once in a while.
I will. I promise.
That would be...
Let me guess. The best day ever. You have a lot of those.
No. Just one. July 2nd, 1988.
The finale does a pretty succinct but not rushed job of wrapping up each
So
individual
good.
character arc
Yeah.
that's been going on throughout the season. While I haven't been able to go into detail on all of it, this season does a pretty good job of giving each character an arc that feels, relatively complete by the end of it. Their growth feels natural, keeping things moving forward while also still allowing them to feel like the same character. This was also the first 2-part season finale that the show's done, so they likely just had a little bit more wiggle room to wrap things up than the season 1 finale did. Mac, after almost leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. because of Coulson, decides to stay and is put in charge of alien artifacts because of his caution for them. May takes a much-deserved break from S.H.I.E.L.D. and goes on vacation with Andrew, possibly rekindling their relationship. Bobby and Hunter basically have an entire ordeal over the past couple of episodes, which I haven't had any chance to get into. But basically, Ward and Kara, who is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was kidnapped and brainwashed by Whitehall until Ward helped her get her memories back, they kidnap and torture Bobby.
Isn't it amazing how much shit happens on this show? It's like, what?
In the first place.
She's just focusing on the big parts. There's still those little ones.
Right.
Lure Hunter into a trap to kill him, but at the last minute, Bobby throws herself in front of the gun, getting severely injured.
Man, there's a lot of blood on this show.
She's kind of left questioning if she even wants to be at S.H.I.E.L.D. in the first place. On their mission to rescue Bobby, May tricks Ward into killing his own girlfriend. So by the end of the episode, he's just kind of left sulking around, ready to reform Hydra and go on a brand new revenge quest. If you can't help someone else with their revenge, but revenge is really the only thing you've known, then just find something new to get revenge about, obviously. Coulson and Skye, the latter of which finally being back to being a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, make plans for the possible formation of a covert team of superpowered individuals that Skye would lead, kind of hinting at the possibility that the show might have their own version of the Secret Warriors, a team from the comics that Daisy was on. And finally, we get to Fitz and Simmons. Throughout the season, they've managed to both find a way to be their own people while also still, repairing their relationship. They're no longer relying on one another fully, but they still care deeply about one another. And now, the chance for something more between them is once again possible, and they make plans to go on a date.
Me and you, maybe we could eat somewhere else.
We didn't mention at all. We didn't at all mention what a big thing because I think it was the shock of Simmons being swept away by that damn rock, but that was a pretty big moment for Fitz. They'll remember we were watching the show for all these episodes, and there was a point where he couldn't even admit to himself, much less even get up the courage to be this upfront and frank. But this is clear, coherent, and very much just understood exactly what Fitz is seeking here. And it took the 2 seasons, but Simmons is at a place where she's now, I think, come to the realization that I might feel something for you, and I want to see where this thing goes. So it was good for Fitz to, finally coming up and having not just the courage, but just also the confidence to be able to just go there.
Mm.
And then, of course,
yeah.
But yeah, it was a good moment for Fitz.
Oh.
But to continue something that becomes yet another trend, they clearly cannot end the season happy. Ever. So, The container for the monolith accidentally gets opened, and after Fitz leaves, fun! This is basically this season's major cliffhanger, something we get basically at the end of almost every season. And just left fans to obsess over and theorize this moment. Like, this is what we were left with. Like, wild. We prefer to leave you something to talk about, to walk away with. The idea of getting Fitz and Simmons, who had been one person, to become two whole people, come back together, agree to go on a date, and then have this happen, felt beautifully poetic and promises some really intriguing stories next season, which is really what it's all about. The season also ends with the reveal that the Terrigen that ended up in the ocean has seeped out and made its way into the food supply. So, I'm sure there will be no consequences from that. And that, my friends, is season 2. While I absolutely love season 1 and will defend it with my whole heart, season 2 really does just step things up a notch. You know, it takes the momentum that the second half of season 1 created and just carries that through the entire thing. And of course, there are parts that I don't like. You know, you have had the pleasure of hearing me talk about those extensively. But like, despite that, it's still amazing. The good very much outweighs the bad. The emotional core of the season is so solid, specifically, you know, with everything going on with Skye and her family. Like, legitimately, I cry pretty much every time I see the scene where Cal kills Jai Ying, or when him and Skye say their final goodbyes. Like, literally, even when I was going back and looking at those scenes out of context for when I was writing, you know, that part of the script, I started crying. And the general reception with both audiences and critics was a lot more consistently positive for this season as well. The perception of rocky starts was pretty much left in season 1, you know? A lot of people agreed that the show had kind of come into its own finally, being able to stand apart from the movies more and kind of find more of its own footing, its own voice. But even though the general perception of the show had improved, that still wasn't enough to bring it out of the ratings pit that it would basically be in for the rest of its run. Even before season 2 came out, the showrunners were already being asked if they were going to have to adjust it to be the final season. S.H.I.E.L.D. would almost constantly have the shadow of possible cancellation hanging over it, because even though it had found its own, you know, small, dedicated fan base, it never found a place within larger audiences like ABC and Disney hoped it would. But by the end of the season, the shadow was pushed back, at least for right now, when the show was renewed for one more season. For the time being, it would persevere. So, while I've talked about most of the relevant stuff for season 2, there is one big thing that I have been saving until now, that major movie tie-in that I've been alluding to a bit. I was gonna try and sneak it in partway through that section, but it didn't really fit there, so it gets to go here. It's my video. I can do what I want. Like I mentioned before, sometime during the production of season 1, Joss Whedon was pulled away from work on S.H.I.E.L.D. entirely to just focus on working on the upcoming second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. This was supposed to be the next big event movie for Marvel. The hype for it was huge, and so were the expectations. And honestly, why wouldn't they be? Given how successful Whedon was with the first one, the follow-up had to be good, right? Right? What could go wrong? Well, Marvel fans should really never ask that question. Because, well, it came out and,
Smaller people?
At this point, they should be asking, what could go right? No, seriously, can you just pause it right here? It's like, let's pause this quick right here. This is the thing that we were talking about. It's like, yeah, this all just feels so trivial to an extent. Not that there weren't legitimate problems or criticisms of any of those movies at that time. But now, I mean, look at where we are. We're 10 years later from 2015, right? in 2015, they had just finished Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2. They had Agent Carter. They debuted Daredevil. Great. And they also had 2 movies out that year. They had Age of Ultron, which, I mean, as watching it in the theater, I was like, oh my God, having the time of my life.
Mm-hmm.
10 years later, I don't think it's aged as well as other movies that year. I also watched, for instance, in that same year, Mad Max Fury Road.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first Mad Max movie, and I watched it in the theater with my friends, Julio and Peter. And you know what? That was such a good movie. But I never loved Mad Max Fury Road because I didn't go back to it. I never revisited it until like a whole decade almost later when Furiosa came out. Hint, hint about some future commentaries coming up to this channel. And it's like one of the best movies, obviously. But man, I had the time of my life watching Age of Ultron. Like 2 or 3 times in theaters, I think. Man. These last couple of years have been absolutely miserable with Marvel movies. Think about where we are right now in 2025. They already had a big strikeout with the Captain America movie. The best things I'm hearing about their new version of Daredevil was that it was solid, or that it was as good as could be expected. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
That's good enough for you?
Yeah.
I wonder if you had that same charitable sensibility when it came to a show called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. No, you didn't. But interesting. But of course, as we were all predicting, it didn't matter the good moments that were sprinkled into that version of the show. Everybody agrees, we all knew what was going to happen. It pales in comparison. There is no comparison. And doesn't it make it look even more embarrassing how you don't even got to go to Netflix anymore to watch that show? It's on Disney Plus. And then Thunderbolts is coming. And again, we keep forgetting it's even a thing. But I saw a tweet today that made me laugh. And it was like, thinking about commenting on the marketing for Thunderbolts. Oh, this almost kind of looks like a real movie. Which I think would inspire some confidence if it wasn't like already a year into marketing and only now you're getting the sense that maybe it can be somewhat decent. I don't know. I just feel like, is there really any suspense? I think the only question is going to be, it's like how some people are putting it out there that, like Peter, that there is a shot Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four might be better than what has been these last couple of years, because in the last 2 years, they've significantly downsized their output because they've realized, oh my God, we're having a whole bunch of disasters one after the other. So maybe these will be competent. I think that's the best we can hope for, right? That they'll be competent. I'm not sure if they're going to be all that good.
I'm hoping for competent for Thunderbolts. I didn't have that for Captain America.
Oh, hell no. Hell no.
That was the amount of reshoots that they were doing. I was just like, are you even going to make a story here? I don't know. And then Thunderbolts, yeah, like I said, I'm looking for some kind of competence with that movie. And only because it's like, it's not really much to these characters. You can do anything to these characters, and we might enjoy it. So, go nuts. And then Fantastic Four, though, is the only one that I want it to be good. I mean, we all want all these movies to be good and all that, but this is like the one that's sure. Like, if you don't get this right, like, good luck with Avengers. You're not gonna make your money. I don't think you're gonna make your money,
especially since you've already made the decision that the Thunderbolts are a pretty big deal in those movies. Apparently,
that's true. Forgot.
So it's like, well, yeah. Let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I I hope it's good because I just want to watch a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
That really is too much to ask for these days. And that's really sad.
They sterilize you. You still think you're the only monster on the team?
It didn't exactly live up to expectations. Okay, let me be clear. It's not a terrible movie. It's not terrible. But it's got some issues. Some pretty big ones.
You still think you're the only monster on the team?
And as an Avengers follow-up, it was definitely disappointing. However, disappointment can pretty quickly turn into vitriol in fan communities, and that is, at least from what I saw, definitely what happened. Joss Whedon was no longer just the, Marvel darling. He was now also the guy who made whatever this was. And kind of like what we're seeing with Taika Waititi now, it doesn't really matter how good the stuff you made in the past is. Usually, whatever's most recent is what's gonna stick in people's minds. But while that response couldn't have been fun, it seems pretty likely that Whedon had already decided what his future with Marvel was going to be. Production on Age of Ultron consumed almost all of his time and energy, and by the end of it, it seems like he already came to the conclusion that he was done with superhero movies for now. I made the idiotic mistake of trying to make a great movie, and then I feel like I've been punished for that for the last 2 years. I put a level of pressure on myself that I've never done before. I've been a sketch artist, and now I'm painting. And then also to know that there are not millions, but billions of dollars riding on your artistic decisions. Sometimes you wish you could forget that.
Jesus Christ.
Can we stop?
Holy shit. That is... But mind you, this was like... That was at the peak of the Marvel movies, where like... Yes, there was some heavy constraints with what he can do in those movies. I think I heard it at one point that he wanted to like throw in an army of those Iron Man's iron suits against Ultron, but then he saw that they did that on Iron Man 3 and he was like, oh, okay, so that idea is out of the bag. Okay, never mind. And so like I said, heavy constraints on his part. Imagine now with like, I don't understand how any director would want to like go back and make another Marvel movie with the amount of constraints that they have on that. You must be going insane.
I mean, has Joss Whedon made a movie since Age of Ultron?
Yeah, Justice League, wasn't it?
Oh my god, I forgot that even. Oh my god. Well, clearly, that's pretty oof. I forgot about that movie completely. David, you had to go there on that Justice League one. I'm gonna go back to 30619. Just so I can see the graphic of that quote, because it was like, this is his mindset while he was making the movie. I made the idiotic mistake of trying to make a great movie, and then I feel like I've been punished for that for the last 2 years. I put a level of pressure on myself that I've never done before. I've been a sketch artist, and now I'm painting. And then also to know there are not millions, but billions of dollars riding on your artistic decisions. Sometimes you wish you could forget. Yeah, this is while he's making a movie for Marvel. He had a miserable time, it looks like, to say the least. Let's go ahead and press play.
Tiny violins playing. No one's listening, sweetheart.
He was set up with the nearly impossible task of living up to the first Avengers, and he cracked under the pressure. This project just kept getting bigger and bigger instead of smaller like he'd originally intended, and I think that's to blame for at least some of the film's biggest problems. It tries so hard to do so much that it ends up just not doing almost any of it well. Apparently, the original cut of it was about 3 hours. Remember when that was a ridiculous length for a superhero movie? Imagine that. I think I want to go back. But while he was already trying to do so much to make his great movie, he also had to consider how it fit into the larger narrative of the MCU. You know, dropping crumbs for future projects and, you know, connecting to past ones, as was the precedent. You know, like, it couldn't be its own thing. It couldn't stand on its own because it had to, you know, fit into something much bigger and, you know, larger narrative that it was beholden to. Somebody said, well, that was a great setup for the next thing in one of the test screenings, and I died inside. Marvel executives were like, no, they say that all the time, it's fine. I was like, no, that's the worst thing I could have heard. I want people to come out feeling done.
Stop it right there.
Oh my god. I gotta put that graphic. Let me see that graphic.
Yeah, you gotta put it up there. It's 307.55 is where I'm at.
Oh.
I mean, it's really hilarious looking at this 10-year-old quote, where we are right now, because doesn't that perfectly encapsulate not only what's the problem with, like, Marvel Studios, but then also what's the problem with movies and movie-going audiences in general these days.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said, well, that was a great setup for the next thing. How many people on the internet, whether it be through the Collider era, Screen Junkies era, or the era that we're living in right now, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the peak, and honestly, a lot of the positive reviews that came out during Marvel movies from this era all the way up until 2020, maybe even, honestly, 2022, because there was still a lot of goodwill after Endgame. How many of those reviews, how many of those personalities you'd go on YouTube said that exact same thing? Well, that was a great setup for the next thing. And then he continues, and I died inside. You know, Joss Whedon is, it has, with all the things that have come to light, not the best person, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to appreciate the honesty here.
Yeah.
This is pretty brutal honesty, and you could tell you only get to this point when you clearly have some sore feelings of the people you've been working with, where you just do not care. And I think it even, at the time when it was announced he was going to take over for Justice League, people interpret it as a small FU to the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Although, again, like, God, I don't even want to touch Justice League because that's a different Frankenstein's monster than anything that we've been talking about here. Then he continues to say, Marvel executives are like, no, they say that all the time. It's fine. I was like, no, that's the worst thing I could have heard. I want people to come out feeling done. Meaning, he wants people to come out feeling, wow, what a great film.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's nothing wrong with including things, teases in there, to keep people interested and get them to come back. Look at what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did.
Mm-hmm.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended with setting a lot of things up, but you also walked out of that finale, this most recent one, feeling done.
Mm-hmm.
That you felt like you ended a chapter. You closed out storylines and you felt fulfilled because they delivered. They didn't stop the story. They didn't, because I think the problem is at some point in the movie making process, especially with the MCU, they completely lost the plot, in which setting up the next thing became the priority, and that came at the direct expense of the story in the film they were currently on, ultimately going nowhere, and it ending kind of in a, I guess this is the end?
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of what it's felt like with most of these movies.
No,
like,
yeah, we keep mentioning it all the time. Where it's just it's Peter, the one that says it all the time. They're backtracking, I guess, on what they want to do. You know, they set up Scarlet Witch as a villain, but then towards the end they backtrack, and so like, hey, look, she kind of redeemed herself in the end. She still could be good and all that. It's like, no, you need to. I remember there was a time when Peter said, that Marvel sticks to what they have. Where I can't remember. He was comparing Marvel with Lucasfilm and all that, and you know, with Lucasfilm, they're not sticking to what they have. They backtrack. I mean, that's how we got. What's the ninth one called? Rise of Skywalker? Yeah.
yes.
That's how we got that one. But with Marvel, you know, Shield went down, and then they stuck to that for the longest time. At least with the movies, they stuck to that. They didn't bring it back. It wasn't like, oh, it was Skrulls this entire time. That was actually Hydra or something like that. You know, they weren't doing anything like that until now. And yeah, now they can't seem to stick to anything, which ultimately leads to having no story into their movies, which is just insane. Also, that last part where he says, I want people to come out feeling done. I did kind of feel that with Age of Ultron. So, kind of weird that anyone would think that too. Because I love that ending though too, especially with
Well, I think he's responding to the comment.
No, yeah, I know.
Because I think the test screenee saw the movie. And ultimately, it's like, I want people to feel done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was calling his own movie that, but I think that's how he took that comment. Wow, that was a great setup.
No, yeah. But I meant to, like, you know, if anyone did come out feeling as just, oh, that was a great setup, that's kind of weird for me, because I did come out feeling like it was done.
I think you and I are kind of in a minority, David. I think a lot of people, if you go back and look at the reviews for Age of Ultron at the time, I think, well, it's hard to remember, right, specifically, but I want to say, like, people, I remember there being a contingent of people that were critical of Age of Ultron, specifically in moments in the middle of the movie where they felt it was more concerned with setting up storylines for future movies instead of what was going on in the present movie. Mm-hmm. However, and I can see that point, and you can argue that there are points where it stops things, but I think what happened is you had Joss Whedon, and he is a talented filmmaker, and it all ended up feeling like a cohesive piece, more or less. It still felt like a movie. Yeah. And the problem with today's installments is they don't feel like movies. They feel stitched together, and they don't have any talented people behind them anymore that can actually make it work. Even Sam Raimi could barely do what he could with Multiverse of Madness. If they had made that movie 10 years ago, it might have been a lot better than what it ended up being. But at that point, he ended up making a Doctor Strange movie in the worst era of Marvel. And it kind of like, he did what he could. Joss Whedon, 10 years prior, was in a position to do a lot more with what he was able to work with. Especially, I think ultimately, at that time, who even knows what he thought of the movie? He might as well have just been wanting to be over and done with it, you know, because I don't even know how many versions they went through. But it sounds like he had a very specific idea for what he wanted to do with this movie, and it kept changing because he's working with Kevin Feige. But yeah, it would be interesting to see ultimately what it was. As a matter of fact, let me just see something real quick. Okay, all right, David. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna play a little bit of a review this is the one that most sticks in my mind because I think this was the first. In 2015, I was a big fan of AMC Movie Talk. And they were the first people that I went with when they had early reviews. So this was an early non-spoiler review of Age of Ultron. So let's go back in time, as we have been, and see what they thought about Age of Ultron in that moment.
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Movie News' special review, non-spoilers review of the brand new Avengers Age of Ultron. We are actually recording this the night that we saw it on, what is it, April 9th?
April 9th, Thursday, April 9th.
April 9th. We all just saw it tonight. We're all very excited about it, and we're here to share that excitement with you. Joining me, of course,
over 10 years ago.
Mark Ellis. Right here, of course, is Amy Rose Eisenbach, Mr. Christian Harloff, and John Schnepp over way yonder. So we just saw Avengers Age of Ultron. I'm going to tell you right now, my expectations got too high for this movie. They did, like the last week and a half, I've done a really good job of keeping my expectations in check until the last week and a half. My expectations were too high, which then left me with, I'm going to walk out really disappointed because nothing can live up to the expectations that I have going in. And I'll tell you right now, we'll get into the positives and negatives in a second, but for me, they lived up to my expectations. Now, is it better? This is what everybody's going to ask. As soon as I say that I really love the movie, people are going to ask, was it better than the first Avengers? My jury is still out on that. I need to see this movie. Schnepp and I were just talking about this. I need to see this movie like one or two more times to really determine that. But the very fact that I'm even having the conversation about comparing it to the first Avengers says a lot, considering I thought the first Avengers was the best comic book movie I've ever seen. But anyway, let's start with some of the things that we thought worked without getting into spoiler territory. This is new for us. Mark, let's start with you. What are some of what worked for you in this movie?
The opening worked really well for me.
Awesome.
This thing kicked off like a rock concert where the band comes on stage, you see all the members that you know and love, and that action sequence to open this movie was just mind-blowing, and bam, we're locked into this sequel. I liked the relationships between each character, like how they were developing a little bit, particularly between Captain America and Iron Man, Hulk and Black Widow. And then you also had things for Hawkeye and Thor to do that I never even expected. Then you talk about the villain Ultron. I think finally we got the best test yet for this team in any of the individual films or in the first Avengers.
Schnepp, let's jump over to the things you liked about this film.
Things I liked the most was the Vision and Ultron and them and their scenes together. I thought that was fantastically done, and it was really fully realized. And there's that Whedon flavor, just the dialogue, James Spader, combining that. They gave a weighty villain to something that might not, I was a little wary of whether it would work or not, even though I love the trailers, and I think it worked fantastic. So that's one of my favorite parts of the film.
Christian?
Ultron. I thought he was the best. I thought, because I didn't know what to expect from him. I just knew he was going to be a menacing villain, but he had so much more, and because of what James Spader brought to it, and because of how he was created, and the sense of humor that he had, honestly, it was really my favorite part of the whole movie was. And it wasn't like, they're giving the robot jokes. No, because that's a part of what his personality was. And I thought he was a good test to the Avengers and the team dynamic, the way that they work. And I also like the further development of Hawkeye. That to me was one of my favorite moments because he's always been the guy like, what's Hawkeye doing there? They even kind of crack on that in this movie. And I thought that the way that he was developed with the other little things that we hadn't seen before really worked for me.
Yeah, some of the things that really stood out to me. Number one, the action right from the beginning. And it's not a spoiler to let you know that scene in the Jeep where you see the Jeep in the wintry background forest and everybody jumping out of the Jeeps. Right. That's like the opening scene of the movie. It's like bang, like a rocket. Just the movie just gets out of it. One of the things I was concerned about for this movie after watching just the first trailer was that where's the fun, the humor, the lightheartedness? You can have all the deep stuff, but for this to be a Marvel movie, you got to have that other stuff too. In spades. Some of the one-liners were incredibly funny. I found myself laughing a lot throughout the film at all the right times and the right points and stuff like that. Somebody else already mentioned the Hawkeye thing. Hawkeye, who was kind of shortchanged a bit in the first Avengers movie, I personally thought as a result was kind of expendable. They really give him his due in this movie. They actually almost do more character development with him than any other character in it. And then, of course, Ultron. I mean, with Ultron, one of my fears about Ultron was he was just going to be the menacing, unbeatable bad guy. Ultron is far more human than you would think. And he has far more human mannerisms in this film than you think. And that's actually a good thing. That's a positive thing. It adds a new layer to him, his motivation, and also just his entertainment values on. Vision, they crushed it. I was worried about Vision because Vision looks ridiculous. I mean, he does. Vision looks ridiculous. He does. But the way they handled him, the way Paul Bettany, brought Jarvisisms into it while still making him a unique entity at the same time was really cool. And I got to agree with you, Schnepp. That scene, several scenes that we see between Vision and Ultron. I'm not saying anything. There are scenes between Vision and Ultron.
Guys.
There are scenes between Vision and Ultron. They're both in the movie. Not a big surprise. Were quite well done. Really, really excellent. And somebody else mentioned the camaraderie, the chemistry between the characters. I thought they did a better job on interpersonal chemistry in this movie than I think they did in the first one, by quite a bit. So those are some things that really stand out to me that I really loved about it. Amy Rose, what about you?
The scale. A lot of the times with a sequel, you're worried that they're going to just try to hit all the same points as the original film, but they didn't. Everything was bigger, more action-packed, further developed. They really continued with the storyline. They weren't just doing the Hangover 2 treatment where it's like, here you go now. So I do think that it just felt bigger in every way, and it was a huge production. What I love so much about Whedon in general with this world is the dialogue. I mean, it's so witty and fun and cheesy at times, but you love it. And the audience, seeing this film with a huge audience that wants to all be there so badly, is part of the fun because we laugh on cue. We're eating out of the palm of their hands. So I feel like it's all timed really well. And you're right, from all the trailers we saw, I thought it is darker, definitely darker, but there is enough humor where the MCU has really distinguished itself. So I just thought it was a really fun, intense time. I like a lot of the new characters. Vision, yes, definitely. Yeah. But Hawkeye, I mean, we got to give it up to our boy again because, I feel like Whedon made it up to him because the first one, I mean, mind control and he never really had a chance to show us what he was made of. And I'm not going to go into spoiler territory, but he was perfect in this film. Exactly what I wanted to see. And I want to talk about details, but I'm not going to.
I'll add one more thing that I should have added before. I'll say right up front, the Maximoff twins, I did not like them at first. I did not like them at first, but then we started to see what Whedon's vision for them was as the film progressed. And by the time we got about 3/4 way through the movie, I'm like, I started to get kind of happy when I would see them on screen. So that's another thing that worked for me. All right, let's go talk quickly then about some of the things that maybe didn't work for us, without going into spoiler territory. Christian, let's start with you. What are some of the things that maybe it didn't live up to its potential?
Bad Russian accents.
You didn't see that coming?
I don't understand. Why are you saying bad Russian accents?
You enjoy
change
vodka?
over the course of the 2.5 hours?
I think everybody agrees. Yes, that was one of the things. Some of it was a little repetitive. I felt like I saw a lot of it in the first movie. I thought that the end sequence particularly was more, it seemed very familiar to the first movie where we've done it. Oh, that beat was in the first one. That beat was there. And it went on for a bit. Even though, look, like Amy Rose said, this is an event summer film. It absolutely is. And you enjoy it and you're on the edge of your seat. But if we're talking about the things I didn't like, that's absolutely one of them. And sometimes things seemed a little bit too convenient. And I also wanted to see more, and I know that I'm going to disagree here, but I wanted to see a little more setup to Civil War. And I'm not going to go into too much of it, but I wanted to see more.
I wonder if we should do an Age of Ultron commentary, since it is 10 years now.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do commentaries for a whole bunch of stuff.
We have to do that, but I'm by the time the year draws out, we should probably do one of those. Because when was the last time we did an Age of Ultron commentary?
I mean, it must have been you and Kyle.
Probably, yeah. Oh, I remember. This was probably 2019, but this was audio only.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which was 6 years ago?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Whole different universe.
Because we're going to get there, and I felt like I was let go of that. And then you and I talked about this beforehand, was at the end of Iron Man 3, like what happens with the end of Iron Man 3?
This is one of my big ones.
And at the end of Iron Man 3, they say Tony Stark is done. He's going to drive off, and we don't know what happens. And then it just starts off, and he's fighting with the Avengers, like no explanation whatsoever. And like, nah, you don't need it. But
yeah, see, I assumed that from the end of Iron Man 3, that Avengers would start with Tony having been retired, and then because of the Ultron threat, puts back on the Iron Man suit. But no, the movie starts with that scene we were talking about, and Iron Man's just fighting alongside them. We're all like, oh, okay, so Tony came back? Is that what happened? Like, they just left it hanging like that.
It's almost as they have a pattern of not being able to commit to their endings.
Well, I mean, also, too, you can interpret it as you want. Like, it didn't have to mean retirement. It's just sort of like bettering himself.
All right, well, Schnapp, what about you? Some of the things that maybe didn't live up to the potential for you.
Well, it's weird. When Tobey Maguire showed up as Spider-Man, I was like, what the?
Spoilers, man. Spoilers.
Oh, spoilers!
Wait, just edit that out, Dennis. Edit it out.
Edit.
Yeah, some of the things that look, like we were talking about this, how difficult it is to even have an opinion because this is a movie that's onto its own. It's fighting itself. It's like Age of Ultron is fighting the first Avengers, and then everything else is kind of underneath it, like, you know, eating the crumbs from these movies that are like giant super spectacles. I really enjoyed this film as a comic book fan. I was giddy. I was smiling and laughing through the majority of the film. I felt there were a few moments sprinkled around that just kind of felt a little bit like they were giving way too much information and then, all right, I'm into it, and then it didn't pay off. So there were a lot of things that were setting up, and like you said, they didn't really do a lot of setup, and that's not a spoiler. They didn't do a lot of setup for Civil War, but they did a lot of other setup, and I just don't know when that's going to, you know, pay off, so to speak. You know, it just felt like there were some moments in it that weren't as, you know, as much as I wanted them to be. So, you know, it's a trade-off. I mean, there were also incredible moments in this film that I'm still happy about. I mean, you know, it's a fantastic film. I just think if I have to complain about one or two things, I think it was like a few of those quieter moments, they just didn't get into they didn't hit it the way I was hoping. And it's not my film, but, you know, it's like, whatever.
Ooh, one more other positive thing I thought about. Andy Serkis is
I didn't know that was a spoiler. Claw.
Well, as Claw. Well, I mean, he's in the IMDb credits.
And he was fantastic.
And he was.
Yeah, so good. No, he's not Claw on IMDb.
I'm positive he was.
No, I'm sorry. Andy Serkis said he was Claw already.
Oh, yeah, that was. He had
London
confirmed
He's
that.
like, isn't it out already?
But Andy, I was afraid Andy Serkis won't look menacing. Andy Serkis looks menacing.
was.
So I like. Anyway, going back to the negative things now. Mark, some of the things that maybe didn't have potential for you.
Well, I was disappointed in myself for eating not one, not two, but 3 buckets of popcorn.
Did you really do 3?
I have no self-control
We did
whatsoever.
2. I did 2. You did 2.
I had
Look,
about 1.5.
This is one of the problems about. I'm not going to be fitting into that vision suit for
I
Halloween
am
like I
very proud
originally
of you,
intended.
Ellis.
There's not a lot else that I was really disappointed with this film. I think that I was expecting something a little different from the villain, and I loved what Ultron brought to the table. It didn't get as dark and it didn't get as deep as I thought it might, because I think everybody, when you walk into a sequel, you assume you're going to get something like Empire Strikes Back, where okay, we're going to give our heroes a different challenge, and maybe there's storm clouds that are even looming over the end of the film. What this did, it felt more like what the first Avengers did, which is it took all those first standalone movies in Phase 1 and it tied them up in a nice bow. And this sort of did that for that one, as opposed to just being another setup. But the more I'm thinking about that, I think that's actually a positive, that we can close the book on that, because when Marvel did that announcement and they showed us, hey guys, look at all these movies we have coming out, we're like, that's going to lead into that, and that's going to lead into that. Sometimes it is nice to just read a comic book and just have some closure, and then we're going to see if they planted seeds that we didn't think about watching this movie when we see Civil War and when we see Infinity War, when, you know, all of our kids are giving us rides to go see that movie.
Let me mention one thing that you brought up.
There you go. Open close book, like we were saying.
Didn't go into enough detail was Ultron. He just sort of shows up, and then it's the threat.
I don't know. I felt good about him.
Yeah.
I felt good about his intro, personally myself, but there's probably going to be a lot of people that agree with you too once they see the movie.
Right.
Amy Rose, what about you? Some of the things that didn't live up to
I
potential.
actually completely agree. I mean, we heard from the synopsis and other things that, you know, Tony was going to be the creator of Ultron and da-da-da, and we heard all of that, but I just thought it was kind of like little payoff with the creation. And I get it. It's a 2-hour and 15-minute movie.
Right.
They couldn't really drag on that, but I also was like, okay, that's it. I just wanted a little more why he went this route, why he went evil. It was just kind of in the span of a second. So I thought that wasn't necessarily a negative, but I would have liked more development. I think it would have made him stronger to really understand why he chose that path. I also thought it was a little less fun than the first one. Pretty much the entire film was one action scene. And I think that, you know, in that way, it kind of presents itself as a little uneven, because to give the audience a moment to catch their breath, like I think the first one did really well, it makes those action scenes even more impactful, because you had the moment to be like, oh, here it comes. But there was no real buildup, because it pretty much was one action scene, which is really impressive, because that pace, the whole film was just so fast. I feel like there was a little more time for interaction and setup in the first one. So I think I had a little bit more fun with it, but the action scenes were pretty damn epic. I mean, Hulkbuster Iron Man with Hulk, that was a sick scene.
And
So that's bad.
And you've only seen a fraction of it. Like
Yeah.
the trailer, I
Right,
mean,
it's
it's
very
like
fun.
it is an explosive and very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very fun. Like
good reasoning why. Also.
Yeah.
It
Oh
makes
yeah.
sense,
And trust
the
us when we
setup, Civil
say
War.
the best scenes of this movie are not in the trailers.
No.
The
No.
best scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
For me, some of the things that didn't work, we talked a little bit. You mentioned the fact that the complete abandoning of any explanation about how did Tony come back to being Iron Man again. So I guess they decided to just abandon that, and we just got to accept that. That's fine. There's a part in the movie, I'm not going to say why, how, or when, but that Thor goes on a bit of a spirit quest that I thought really was dumb. So there's that.
Didn't go anywhere either.
No, it didn't really go anywhere. It was
Kind of
anyway.
did.
Yeah.
I thought that Vision quest was important.
Okay. And then
It's your vision.
the once again, not setting up the how, where's, when's, or why's, but we were talking about it off camera. Nick Fury kind of does something in it that left me going, how is he doing this? A little bit. So you'll see what I mean when you see the movie. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Let's get into just.
So those are initial reactions of people who saw it, I guess evidently on April 9th, 2015, way before it actually opened in theaters. That's pretty much about as well as I remember the reaction being.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, although I feel like as the years have gone on by, and as Emma said in her video, it's very easy for the fans to just form a lot of vitriol. And I think to some audiences, they would remember it a bit more hostilely, I guess. Anything else to say on this before we go back to Emma's video?
Honestly, this was just fun to watch because you look at other reviews coming out now, and it's just kind of like I feel like y'all are grasping on straws to try to like say something nice about these Marvel movies. You know, I'm sure you can find flaws. I mean, yes, Age of Ultron had like some flaws and all that, but the fun parts, they were fun. They were memorable. I mean, it's just, that's all you think about with those movies, you know. That's all you think about with any movie, you know. Every movie has its flaws and all, but when it hits, it hits. And
It was a different era.
Yeah,
it's a different era, and I feel like that kind of review, the energy they were bringing, the enthusiasm they were bringing, it doesn't exist anymore, really. That's why I don't really watch many reviews anymore, especially for these kind of movies specifically, right? Also, the whole vibe was just like so just welcoming and inviting, and you could see why they had built a fan base for a couple of years. It was just fun to hang out with these guys. You felt like you were in the room with them when they were talking about movies. And Lord knows, of course, I don't agree and never would have agreed with everything that was being said from all of those personalities, but that core group you saw right there, Harloff, Ellis, Amy Rose, John Campion, of course, the late great John Schnepp, that was the real dream team. They were the original team, basically. Yeah, it was definitely nostalgic to watch that. I'm not gonna lie though, when I was watching that review, I was like, do I want to react to the Barely News Crew review that we did? And I'm like, I don't think I want to see myself on camera. So like that, let's not do that just yet. And there's technically several. I'm not even sure that if we're thinking about the same one. I was thinking about, we did a Marvel Project review with me and Peter. That was the one that I had in mind. I forgot about the one that I did solo, because those were very different videos. But yeah. Okay. Well, you are right though. Today they're just lifeless, and you can tell that the personalities are just like they're really trying to be nice, even though they realize the movie wasn't very good. All right, so let's go back to Emma's video.
I get the impression that he just felt done with this format and all of the expectations that came with it, and that was it. He walked away from Marvel. The Russo brothers signing on to do the next Avengers movie, and he never came back. And with him, he took any influence that he may have had on the connection between the movies and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But before that connection had been completely severed, it did bring the last big tie-in that we'd see on the show. And that tie-in ended up kind of being two-pronged. First, the episode where the original team infiltrates the Hydra base is almost like a prologue to Age of Ultron. In addition to their main mission, Coulson also steals some information from Hydra, mainly the location of Loki's scepter. Kind of appropriate given that that's what killed him. He gives it to Maria Hill, which explains how she knew where to send the Avengers at the beginning of the movie. It's not like a huge revelation, but it is kind of fun to see that, you know, Coulson is still finding ways to help the Avengers even though they think he's dead. The end of the episode also act as kind of like a trailer for the movie. While talking to Jiaying, Rena suddenly gets a vision of a robot attack. Basically the events of, especially like later in the movie.
Consequences are upon us. Men made of metal will tear our cities apart. And the world will be changed forever.
This one is fine. It's a little bit more clunky. Like, it at least does serve some purpose in the narrative. You know, it kind of, at this point, confirms the validity and importance of Reina's powers. But at the same time, it does kind of come off as just a contractually obligated tie-in trailer. So, you know, not bad, not incredible as tie-ins go. And finally, in the following episode, we get to see the most consequential part of this tie-in. Through a flashback, the show finally reveals Coulson's, you know, big secret, the mysterious Theta Protocol that he's been all around the world for, you know, spending immense resources on. You know, the thing that's the major point of conflict between Coulson and the real S.H.I.E.L.D. and, more personally, Coulson and May. You know, that thing? It's a helicarrier. Not one that appears in the show, though. Except, you know, in the flashback. It's in the movie. You know, the one that appears in the movie and saves people. The movie that's a completely different thing from the show and has a completely separate narrative and payoffs. It's a plot device for a different story. This tie-in was pretty cool at the time. I mean, look at that. The events of our show are directly impacting the movie in a pretty big way. But, like, looking back on it, especially, like, that's weird, right? Like, this whole thing, Theta Protocol, the helicarrier, this is like a big secret that the show has been building up to through pretty much the entire season. But the show doesn't get the payoff. The payoff is in a completely different story. It's in a movie that can't even acknowledge where the damn thing came from. Like, that's weird. Given the audience, most people
I disagree.
watching the show
It's still
will
cool.
also see the movie, so it's not like they're missing any vital information. But at the very least, it makes the pacing feel very strange. Like, you know, we have all this build up, but then the only
I see where she's coming from, and I think that critique can be made of most things today because they don't feel, they're not made that well. Because this was made well, it's still kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna
have actual plot to get to.
It's hard to argue with a man who prevented Ultron from killing thousands of people. But there are plenty more battles to be won, and one closer to home that I fear the helicarrier won't solve.
This just makes the reveal in the show feel more like a chore to get through before we, you know, can get to the actual plot relevant stuff. A lot of the narrative around this season is that they were trying to, you know, rely less on the movies and stand on their own more, you know, now that they had a second season. Last year, our mythology, our whole season was built around the Winter Soldier. So the tie-in blew up our show, but also this year we have our own mythology. We are our own story and our own show. It has to exist within our story and tie into their story, which is separate. It's not like our villain is the same villain. Problem with this tie-in is that it makes it so the movies are actually stealing the show's thunder. The thing that was really great about the Winter Soldier tie-in is that the show pretty perfectly balanced both being able to tell all of its own story while still connecting to the story of the movies. While the writers did have some more freedom to write their story around this season's tie-in, it only really ends up harming the cohesiveness of season 2. I don't think the tie-in should have been like, bigger or anything. Honestly, I think just if it was gonna mess with the flow of the story this much, maybe it should have been lessened. So, it didn't feel like we were just building up to nothing. But it seems like they learned their lesson, because from here on out, pretty much all of the remaining tie-ins are pretty inconsequential on both ends. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. It lets the show continue to tell its story on mostly its own terms, not determined and pushed around by movies with unpredictable release schedules. However, as a consequence, it does also serve to distance the show further from the rest of the MCU. While difficult to coordinate, the tie-ins did make it undeniable at the time that the show was in fact canon, and without big tie-ins, the show risked kind of drifting off into its own corner of Marvel media, something that wasn't helped by Joss Whedon's exit. Admittedly, this is complete speculation, but I imagine that having a familial connection between these two parts of Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios and Marvel TV with the Whedon brothers, probably helped a little bit. Like, Joss may not have been working directly on the show at this point, but, he was still in a position to bridge that gap a bit. It's not really possible to know if him being at Marvel longer would have made any difference, but at the very least, he was the first tie to be cut. I do want to acknowledge that I don't think him parting from Marvel is a bad thing. Like, if it's not clear at this point, I am not a Joss Whedon fan. I think it is good that he was limited in the amount of influence that he could have over Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I think it's important to recognize that his departure is at least a part of the answer to the question that we've been exploring, but it's hardly the complete answer. So, synergy is a word that came up a lot when I was doing research and reading interviews for this video. But something that I also remember hearing a lot at the time when the show was coming out was the idea of it's all connected. This was kind of a slogan for Marvel, especially in these early MCU television years, it's kind of how they marketed a lot of their big tie-ins, like Age of Ultron, trying to make this big deal out of how, these different pieces of media were all, connected in a cohesive universe. It's also the title of one of the installments in the series that they used to do of MCU guidebooks, which covered Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter. Something that I think it's one of many things that's a pretty strong indication that those two shows were, at least at the time, intended to be canon to the MCU. Just make a note of that. And that synergy wasn't just limited to the movie tie-ins, of course. We had that connection with Agent Carter. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was even rumored to get its own spin-off with just Bobby and Hunter. And the show even got to influence the comics. Not only did the show's original characters get to appear in their own comics, like I mentioned, but it even got to influence pre-existing character stories. One comic that I didn't mention was actually probably my favorite of the S.H.I.E.L.D. comics run. It just didn't make sense to talk about it quite yet because I'd only talked about season 1 up to that point, but basically it brings in the comic version of Daisy Johnson and her father, Calvin Zabo, and integrates her show counterparts in Human Origins into her pre-existing backstory. And around the same time as all of this, Marvel's first streaming show, Daredevil, would come out on Netflix, which was soon followed by an entire slate of Marvel Netflix shows, which would not only be connected to each other, but also acknowledge, at least in passing, a connection to the rest of the MCU. So basically, by 2015, Marvel, and especially Marvel TV, was already boiling over with their coveted synergy. Our challenge last season was, of our 6 characters, 5 of them were new to people, not from the MCU. What's cool this year is that our characters are getting their own comics, they're becoming a part of things, and people care about them. So even if shows like S.H.I.E.L.D. weren't the smash hit that Marvel was hoping for, Marvel TV was still holding relatively strong. Having now fed the mothership, Jeff Loeb could, work Marvel properties into more and more different channels and new media platforms, like different streaming services. Things were looking up with more and more opportunities coming onto the horizon. But in reality, the cracks just weren't quite visible yet, but would only continue to grow in the years to come. Whew, okay. That was a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I just had a lot of fun making this, and I'm so happy that I can, share it with you now and have it out in the world, because this is a show, like I said, that is very important to me, and I love talking about it. So thank you for indulging me, and yeah, please, stick around, like and subscribe or whatever actual YouTubers say, all that. But really just come back for the next one, because that one is going to be a lot of fun.
That last thing she said there, and nothing specifically, she was referring to Marvel Television under Marvel Entertainment. But I think the same can be said of the movies too, where it's like the cracks just weren't visible then.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like all of the issues and problems that the movies have right now, it didn't start after Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
This was something that started way, way back. And as time went on, the cracks became wider and wider, to the point where we couldn't ignore them. I want to say at this point, the passion and fire that I have for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. never went away. But I do want to say, Emma she's a really interesting character, isn't she? But despite the fact that, whether or not we agree or disagree with everything she says, you can't deny her enthusiasm and passion for the show. And I love the fact that she did this video to really spread that word around on this show. I really do feel like no one has better defended the merits, especially of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, than she has. So she really should be commended for the work that she's done. Again, this video has 113K views. Her only YouTube video, and she's working on the follow-up, which hopefully should be out pretty soon. But a damn great, masterful job at that. And yeah, before we bring a wrap on season 2, we do have a couple of more things to watch together. Let's go ahead and go over to some of the deleted scenes.
Our friends became our enemies, and our enemies became stronger.
Rip those kids apart.
It's not a video game.
What timestamp are you on, David?
45.
Okay. Interesting. So Baksh's reaction to Simmons.
Yeah, which is a good thing to cut, because
yeah,
you get it.
Didn't really add, yeah.
Fine, ready. I should get back to work. Okay.
Working together. I thought it would be good for us. Like old times,
Sometimes it catches up with me, too.
Yes, well, it's to be expected, isn't it? I'm not sure why I thought. It's just after what Ward did to him.
You're allowed to be angry. You know that, right?
I do. These past few months are the longest Fitz and I have been apart since we met. Isn't that a silly thing to think about?
That you miss him? No. But you should tell him that. You Brits keep way too much to yourselves. Except for Hunter. Is he even British? It's like he just doesn't stop talking.
He does talk a lot. And always about Bobby. He's clearly very much over her, wouldn't you say?
I'm glad you're back.
I'm getting there.
That was a good one.
That's
I forgot
really
about
good,
that.
man.
Yeah.
Whew. Doubt anyone's been down here for a few decades.
This isn't an archive. It's a tomb of information. And I bet Agent Carter had good reason to bury it. Get these all to the
There's a lot
lab.
of Simmons scenes that got cut. I didn't realize. Oh, there's that thing again. Oh, the touching of the shoulder with the hand. They both do this to each other throughout the series. I didn't realize this. Dan, they should not have cut this. They do this so many times in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. How you holding up?
I'm not. I'm trying, though.
I'm sorry about Trip. It's been rough for everyone, but I know you guys were really close.
Yeah. We were. He's just so easy to be around, you know?
With everything going on, everything moving so fast, sometimes we take for granted the stuff that matters most.
I know I did. And here we are. The lucky ones that get to talk about it.
Quarantine survival kit.
The whole room was shaking. The gun in my hand exploded.
Oh, God.
I thought that I could handle it, but I can't. It's too much. I think we have to tell Coulson what's happening.
Hang on. Wait, just wait until I've analyzed.
I can't control it when I get upset. Or nervous.
I know. All right. But are you not nervous about what will happen if you reveal it to them? Have you heard Simmons and our deadly artillery program?
Simmons is just upset about Trip. She's trying to stop bad things from happening.
With the shoot first policy, I don't recognize her right now.
Do you recognize any of us? Everything is backwards.
I remember the Simmons I trust. Because I was talking to her recently. Yeah, that was a thing that I was seeing Simmons. I wasn't talking to myself, I was speaking to her.
Okay. Like hallucinating her?
Yeah, whole conversations, she was very supportive. That look you're giving me right now, that's exactly the look that everyone's going to give you if you tell them. Please,
This scene is
asking,
way
just
too
let me
important.
figure
What
out
the
exactly
hell?
what's going
I
on.
don't care about stink eye.
I know, that would be the least of our problems.
How many more problems could we have?
I'm running that diagnostic on your blood samples right now. Hopefully when it's done, we'll have a solution. Then there's nothing even...
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
There's some
Whatever
pretty big
this is.
moments there,
That's
because it
really-
has
Check out
Fitz
the
talking
explosives
about
high-tech.
him hallucinating Simmons to somebody else.
That was.
Weaver, tell you what happened to her at the academy that day? Hydra released an enhance on them. This guy was 8 feet tall. His skin was hard as steel. Ripped those kids apart. Found Weaver in the boiler room, fighting to protect the ones that were left behind. She was actually going toe-to-toe with that monster. Took 17 bullets in the head to put him down. And lucky to get out of there alive.
That's not Sky.
One day we will all be gone. But God willing, S.H.I.E.L.D. will continue. We have withstood terrible storms in the past. Betrayal. Our friends became our enemies, and our enemies became stronger. But we cannot afford to be enemies to each other. When there are new threats out there, waiting for the moment we are at our weakest. A house built on shifting sand will fall. And without a strong and united foundation, S.H.I.E.L.D. will fall again.
Exactly how did you manage to escape unscathed?
What are you implying, Doctor?
Well, most of Hydra's leaders were wiped out in one fell swoop, but not you. I was just curious if you might know anyone involved.
Let's see how Bakshi holds up under questioning.
He's held up to worse than this.
Yeah? How's he do with poison?
You know the Baroness died sipping a Blanc de Blanc like this? Only she had no idea it was laced with a chemical weapon that would turn her to stone.
Which I developed in Dr. Whitehall's labs. You think I poisoned the Baroness? Killed Bloom?
Someone put a bullet in his head.
I assumed it was you, or struck her. You had the most to gain, and look, here you sit, alive and well, with more money and manpower than ever. This is delicious. Though I prefer the richness of a Clermont.
See? Told you it was good.
They're taking off.
That was just differently edited.
That's probably where they're going.
Yeah.
We
Look at a different take.
Oh, one problem. They seem to have a pilot.
You can fly one of these, can't you, baby?
Yes. I believe I can.
Okay, honey, we're all set. I found a car, gassed it up. Would have been here sooner if my Chinese was better.
Oh, no, really?
Contractions are less than 3 minutes apart.
Okay. Well then, I'm a doctor.
We'll do this right here. Did I tell you about the moon? Oh, it's a big, full moon out there. You know, if you hadn't cleaned the house before telling me it was time, we might not be doing this the old-fashioned way.
Cal.
Yes.
Cal. Promise me if anything ever happens to me, you will always protect her.
Of course, my love. Nothing's gonna happen to you. Huh? Nothing, huh? You're in good hands. But right now, we need to get you to the bed so we can deliver this beautiful baby girl, right? So on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we didn't need that one. I very much prefer it to be told to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people always say, show, don't tell, and all that, but I think that was the one. Well, telling her did a lot more than like seeing it for ourselves and all that. So
I think that the 2 scenes there's 3 actually that I would prefer. I like the Sky Simmons one, the Sky Fitz one, and then also that short Simmons Fitz one.
Yeah. The Sky Simmons one. Oh wait, Sky Fitz one.
Fitz, yeah.
Yeah, is like, I feel like that one was the most important one that they should not have cut out. It just sort of like encapsulates everything that like that we talk about whenever people complain about certain characters. When people complain about Simmons, about how the way she was acting towards like Sky's Inhuman stuff, that right there really like hits it hard of this is why she is different. This is why they really don't want to tell the rest and all that. I mean, it's just, I feel like there's like a whole bunch there.
I like how the comments on the page are noticing how like Simmons isn't 75% of these deleted scenes. It's like, again, a lot of characters. All right, well, let's have some fun. Let's go to bloopers.
Good workout day, brother.
Ooh, that's my back.
My name is Phil Coulson. I represent the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement Logistics Division, and you are about to enter a quarantine.
Help me!
Just, say that again.
It's just, it doesn't, wait, I don't know what, that, okay.
This path we've chosen makes you forget your lines sometimes.
I need each of you to take a seat, and then Yep.
We gotta get out of here. Are we recording? I assume this all makes you happy.
Why would this make me happy?
I don't know.
Completely blank right now. Just blank. I don't even know what show this is. Where's Julie Louis-Dreyfus?
It's not shooting. What?
Put spy? It's not the critic who counts. I don't see the other film.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna go back to my trailer.
To moving on.
Yeah, to moving on.
I got to go. Damn it! I can't. Well.
Should last long enough to plant the bomb and get back up.
Really? We'll make her comply.
Can you get my coconut water?
Yes, absolutely.
The question is why?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, that's gone down the middle of the thing.
Hunter asked me to leave with him once.
There's gnats.
Yeah.
Flies and birds. It's like in his ear.
They just landed right here in this spot.
Now we find out what kind of monster we're dealing with.
Oh my God.
Did they just turn off their comms?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty obvious. What are you looking up on that? Porn.
How do you know?
Because I know what you're like.
You know what I like too.
Oh, Jesus. You haven't even checked out the record collection. You like Beatles, Coltrane, Zeppelin, Wu-Tang.
Carlos Santana.
Oh my God.
Hi, I'm Daisy from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Sky. Sky, wake up.
I knew you were gonna do that. I thought it was the last thing.
God, this show looks so much fun. I could watch 5 hours of that. This, what was that scene with Fitz and Mac? What were they saying there?
Fitz and Mac? Oh, he's asking him like, I was like, are you watching porn on that thing? And he's just
Oh,
like,
really? Let me see.
yeah. Yeah, he's like, are you watching porn?
it right now.
Yeah, he's like, are you watching porn on that thing? And he's like, how'd you know?
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that. That's funny. Oh man, these are great.
Oh, my cheeks hurt.
Right? This just feels like such a fun place to work at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it's always so funny when like they forget their lines. Some actors are pretty good at hiding the panic.
Yeah.
Because they don't show it in their face like, oh, I guess I forgot my line. God. I mean, I wanted to include also the last thing that we're going to play here is an interview with the whole cast. This takes place after they film season 2. This is the Comic-Con of 2015, which would be the summer before season 3 starts. So I think we're going to use this as a transition from leaving season 2 and getting into season 3. Let's see how, because this is the first time we're going to do a cast interview on our rewatch series anyway. Oh,
T to the V to the L to the I to the N to the E, TV line.
Piece of business to get out of the way first. Luke and Henry are now series regulars. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Does it feel any different? Reaction.
Awesome.
I really don't like these people at all. I'm really awkward right now, but no, they're pretty cool, so I feel pretty good about it.
But it is a great Australian accent, which is awesome.
Yeah, because I'm really American. I'm just putting this on right now because.
Again, it's creepy how they can do that. Like you wouldn't even know he was Australian, right? And then
Dig Aussie.
Clark, how's the hand?
We got a pretty good one.
Oh, look how good this
Spent a
one
lot of
is.
money.
It's true.
It's good. Wait, I feel like as soon as I pull attention to, it goes in. That's a development that's coming. There's only one person here who knows anything about the possibility of me getting a new hand.
Yes.
And he's not going to say anything.
No.
But season 3, well, there's going to be something at the end of your arm.
Have you heard crazy fan theories about what's going to replace it?
I heard from Mad Max Fury Road that Charlize Theron is no longer using that cool metal claw. I might get to use that for a little bit. I'm hoping it's just a thing where I can basically add different attachments based on what I'm baking or killing.
technically,
Elizabeth, you're
that might happen.
You just don't
means
you
no.
never know with Marvel. Yeah, I just turned up. It has been awkward all day.
How scared are we now that Brett is in charge of Hydra?
Very scary about that.
He's about to piss.
But because we also love him, I'm happy for him for kind of moving up. I'm happy he got a
Yeah.
promotion, kind of realizing his true potential.
This is a newer, more fun Hydra. You know, we're gonna change the logo. It'll be a happy face. We're gonna have like squiggly arms.
You're gonna give kids teddy bears that later explode.
Can you say anything about how much of where we pick up? Is there a time jump?
Time has passed.
How much?
Time is. Oh, yeah.
50 years, we're all
God.
Long enough for Elizabeth to come out in her new form?
Long enough for
The
your
other
hand?
actress who's playing Elizabeth?
I don't know. I'm on strike. And I'm on strike.
This is such a huge cast. Obviously, look at this, and some people aren't even here. Is there anyone in the cast that you would really like to work more with that you haven't had a chance to in this upcoming season?
Anyone on the team again.
I just realized Ming's not there.
Season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Almost about a year since the flip happened. And there was this really weird sort of uneasy thing that brought us back together. In the
Yeah,
same
she's the
space.
big omission here. She's not here.
Getting to work with these guys again, and I hope that happens again in whatever capacity.
But I did love when Simmons said you should have shot him in the face.
Yeah, I love that.
I have to pour a little shield beer out for some of the people I'd love to see again, like BJ Britt. Even some of our supervillains, like I wouldn't mind if there was a blue grease spot that got turned back into Bill Paxton.
Oh, yeah. Raina, Ruth.
Oh, yes, I'd like to.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when you read the bonus scene?
Elizabeth?
When Elizabeth
Elizabeth getting sucked in.
Yeah, how did you feel, guys?
To the rock creature.
Did you cry?
I was like,
I actually did. I gasped
out loud.
I didn't get what happened.
What did you say?
She
Quite
turned
as much
into it.
until I saw it.
I
I mean, I
what?
understood it.
Wait, this is what we saw.
We just got some
saw the rock clearly has 2 stages. It's solid and then it's liquid, and then we saw the liquid pour all over her, and then we saw the liquid turn back into a rock.
To be honest, I thought it was really
What does that mean? You didn't give us anything.
I just wanted to be clear
There's
that
so
it wasn't
many
like she got
rocks.
sucked up into the
You
rock.
didn't leave it open. You left
So
it
I'm
open,
not
and
in
that's
the
why
rock.
she's gone.
But you could.
How irresponsible of him.
Yeah.
That's not what
He didn't leave it open. Did he leave it open?
Yes, he left it open.
No.
I thought that's what happened. He
That's
did.
what people think happened.
I don't know.
Maybe there's a reason why you did.
Whoa.
Shut
Stop!
the
Stop!
That's funny.
Hydra.
So yeah, we didn't have Marissa or Jed or Ming or Jeffrey Bell here because they're the other big pieces of this, but we had Jeff Loeb there. We can already tell from that video just how much he kind of bullied them, or like how much he knows and they don't know. Like you don't know which way this way is gonna go. Just some observations about that. You can tell just how long ago in time this was, because the whole time I'm thinking, well, when these kinds of interviews, you're not necessarily sure like how many people are going to be appearing for your cast interview, but I was kind of surprised that it didn't seem like anybody was mic'd. right? Like it seemed like there was like only one microphone for the whole cast.
Yeah.
And then one other mic for the interviewer. Whereas if it was filmed today, a couple of those, at least pass around a microphone. That way we could hear it better for the most part. But yeah, this was fine. But I think clearly the news that they had here was that Luke Mitchell, who plays Lincoln Campbell, and Henry Simmons, who plays Mac McKenzie, had been promoted to series regulars, meaning that they were going to appear in every episode, basically, of the next season. That they were like part of the main cast now, which is big for them, and they're both going to have big seasons with season 3. But yeah, I think they also did like they did a whole Comic-Con panel. I'm not gonna watch that, but yeah, for the most part, I think this is where we are. I think we get a sense that these kids like each other, don't they?
Yeah.
I think there are much better interviews as the series goes on. Right now, this is kind of like early days, still so far. But yeah, it was nice to see that. And I think we had a good range of clips that we were able to pull from. And I think that's just about it. I don't know. Oh, there is one more thing before we go today. We have to rank our episodes. I just forgot. Right. Yeah, that's one more thing we need to do. I guess if I were to just pick, and I'm really curious to see which ones would be like... if we were to have the same ones. I would go with episode 4, Face My Enemy, which features the May versus May fight. I'll go with number 7, The Writing on the Wall, where we finally get to see the true impact and meaning of like the literal writing on the wall for Coulson. That's 2 episodes. Next, What They Become, the mid-season finale. That's 3, correct? Yes, I have What They Become, The Writing on the Wall, Face My Enemy. And the other 2, it's simple. Melinda, and then SOS. I'm going to use part 1 and part 2 as one big thing, because it's pretty much one episode. So I'll put SOS, Melinda, Writing on the Wall, What They Become, and Face My Enemy. Those are my top 5.
Okay, so for me, not a particular order, but Melinda. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
It's just
the
way those connected, her backstory. It's great. Fantastic. Where did I put episode? Yeah, Face My Enemy also. Not just because of the Melinda fight, but I believe that it's also the one with Fitz like having a beer with Hunter, and
that's the one. Yeah,
it's really because of the Fitz thing. I loved it when he kind of steps up, tries to get out of his shell and all that. Those are great. And then What They Become, the transformation and everything, that's really fantastic. And then Aftershocks, at least I think it's that one.
Yes,
that's the one. Yeah, well, everything afterwards, her and Sky and Fitz's moment where he tries to comfort her and all that. But then also, I really just like the teleport guys.
Gordon,
yes. Gordon's entrance. He goes, "Hey, gorgeous!" So get out of here and all that.
Yeah.
I always laugh at that every time I think about it, just because the whole time she's just like, I'm hideous, and he just goes in, swoops in, literally superhero pose, stands up and goes, "Hey, gorgeous," and just dips out. It's an awesome entrance, honestly.
Yeah, it really is.
And the 5th one, I'm actually having trouble with. I feel like it's gotta be like early ones though.
Yeah. I mean, Shadows, I think, is a close one. Which was the very first episode. I think the very first episode is a strong entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that one. The Things We Bury, which is like the whole thing of like Whitehall's past and Jiaying's past. Not well, Whitehall's past and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We could do. Because the problem with season 2A is like a lot of these episodes blend in together.
Yeah.
So it's like hard to like pick which ones.
I'm stuck between Heavy as the Head actually and A Hen in the Wolf House. Just because Hen in the Wolf House is the one where we had that saw like in the deleted scene, where Reina outs Simmons. She's still in Shield and all that. Because I love that moment though too, because that's the first time that we see Reina just freak the fuck out, like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting my way here. Like, I don't know what to do. But then also though, it's just with both Heavy as the Head and then this one, it really shows like how difficult of a job Coulson has, where like the kind of decisions that he has to make and all that. And so I really like when they hit on that in the first.
But you are right. Heavy as the Head is great too, because that's like the whole with striking back with Absorbing Man. Hunter is also a kind of a dark horse in play there. It's interesting. And then A Fractured House was that was the one where they were blamed for the UN attack. With this, they had the splinter bombs, the debut of the splinter bombs. It's hard to pick.
Yeah,
it's hard to pick. I would also put out there. We don't want to. There's One Door Closes, which was episode 15. That was a strong episode where they revealed the real Shield. That was where we cut back to the day that the Winter Soldier took place, and where Bobby and Mac were on the ship, basically.
Oh, that's right. A flash. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's another one to have in consideration. That one.
Ooh. I think I might have to take one out.
It's tough. Yeah. A lot of people would also, a fan favorite would be The Dirty Half Dozen.
Yeah. Sounds good. Honestly, I think I'm gonna like take out Face My Enemy.
Okay.
And put,
which is fine. I have it in, so you can put a different one in.
Yeah. And then One Door Closes. Just because that backs those flashbacks of what they dealt with during Hydra takeover. That's fantastic, honestly.
It is.
I said, they tried to do within those minutes what they did in the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D., where it's like, we got to get these people together, we got to get them to work together, and we got to believe that they're a team at the very end. And I think they did a fantastic job at that. And I really got to give them props for that. So, so I think in order, I think I would probably choose One Door Closes, and then Hen in the Wolf House.
Okay.
Melinda, and then Aftershocks and What They Become.
What They Become. And then I had Face My Enemy, Writing on the Wall, What They Become, Melinda, and SOS. So, what was your one favorite of the season? Do you have one?
Probably What They Become.
What They Become. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think, yeah, I think that one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I don't know, Melinda's right up there. Melinda, What They Become. So it's okay. Looking over at this, okay, if I had to pick a least favorite episode, which is tough because they're all very good, I don't think it would be one from season 2A. It probably would be season 2B.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to go from here, the options that I have for least favorite would be, I think, One of Us, which was the episode that was about Sky's father gathering those other modified people on the Index Although it was a fun episode because like it was Cal going crazy and had a bunch of great lines. But it was also really good because it brought in Dr. Gardner. There's also Love in the Time of Hydra, which was mostly from what I remember is 33 and Ward. So I don't care too much about that per se. How did you feel about the Sif episode this year?
I mean, it was fun. I mean, that's the thing though. If I had to, it's between Who You Really Are and One of Us. That's like the least favorite episode.
Yeah,
but not because
they're
it's
not
bad,
bad by any means.
Yeah, I mean, just like there's little details in it that really progress the story and all that. And I mean, I feel like it probably had to be Who You Really Are, but only because I really like the therapy scenes with Sky and
and Gardner.
Yeah, just because I mean, it's really cool the way they go into detail. I really like how they got her into it when she was like, I was like, oh, why should I talk to this guy? It's like, and May goes, because he's my ex-husband. And then cut to the next scene. It's like, okay, how was the wedding like? I mean, it was just really funny.
That is true.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, yeah, the Sif episode, it's not bad or anything. It's just, I feel like I just might have the least amount of things to talk about.
Maybe
out of all the other ones. Because I mean, we find out that that the Inhumans were made to be weapons. Yeah, well, at least I guess they never bring that up, huh?
What?
When the real Shield people are like, oh, these people are a threat and all that. They never really bring up the fact that they were created by Kree to be weapons. I feel like that would have worked in their favor.
It could have, but Bobby and Mac weren't in the room when that information was being revealed. It was only Sky, May, and Coulson. And as we've seen, Coulson wasn't really wanting to risk Sky. I don't know if Bobby and Mac find out specifically. I know they do eventually, but I don't necessarily remember what they know. That may be information that just they didn't get to gather because they happened to be out of the room. Although maybe, I don't know. For whatever reason, it just didn't come up. I guess that didn't necessarily make a difference. I think for Mac, it was all the same. Alien and powers, and it could be, but that's an interesting point to have out there. I would also shout out episode, not for one of the least, but what I liked, The Frenemy of My Enemy, which was basically when Cal and Sky are out on a father-daughter date.
Oh, yeah.
That was and then how it really revved up with the action toward the end. That was a really good one too. But yeah, I think I would agree. Maybe we could say Who You Really Are would be like the least favorite of the season. But it's kind of like, what does that really mean when every episode of this season was really good. Just like from like a bare minimum, you know? And then of course we had ranges, but yeah, it's really interesting. Since we're at the end of season 2, for those of you who are watching and listening, can you please at the comments down below, hey, if you want to rank all 22 episodes from favorite to least favorite, you can do that. I'd be curious to see it. But if you want to rank your just top 5 and maybe your bottom 5, that'd be an interesting couple of lists to read. And by all means, I would love to hear you expand on the thoughts that we've had here, and also for any of the clips that we played and some of the commentary that we had here. This was such a blast. I love the fact that we're able to really kind of like regroup and kind of like, because remember, this is not just about reacting to the episodes, but also having a full-on like discussion of like the legacy and where the moment was. And I'm really happy that we were able to have like this little bit extra bonus to go over with season 2. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it very much. I just like how some of you are seemingly really enjoying these discussions, and I really am happy that you are. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to take a break. We're going to be doing Andor and Furiosa. So that's this coming month. So we will return. Also, I didn't mention it, but I'm also going to be out of the country for like a week. So this again, a lot of things are happening. So we will return on Friday, March. I keep saying March. I don't know. I think it's just late. We will return on Friday, May 26th. Now it feels like a very long time, and it is going to be a whole month, but we do hope that you will come back and watch the specific content that we will be engaging in. Andor specifically, Shield, especially when it got to the 4th season, I thought it was one of the most topical shows at the time because it was airing during the time of the first Trump administration, and now here at the time of the second Trump administration, and again, we don't know if this is the final one or not. We've got years to find out. But in any case, Andor is coming out at a time when people really feel the threat of fascism suffocating them. And again, timely time to just drop this out of nowhere. So thank you all very much again, and we will see you in a month. If not, I hope to see you sooner for some of our other reactions. Come back here for under our red spotlight, guys. All right then. Bye-bye.
Bye.